Hey guys, the Bahamas cruising fee fiasco is back in the news again, and the government has issued a statement that they're going to re-examine the cruising fees with the goal to, quote, recalibrate the framework while keeping the Bahamas welcoming and competitive, end quote. Sounds like a good idea, right? So why are they doing this? They've gotten a lot of feedback from key stakeholders in the Family Islands, particularly Abaco and Exumas, where they're reporting cancellations, empty marinas, reduced advance bookings. And this is certainly validated by the ad hoc reports you see on social media showing pictures of empty marinas and anchorages and so forth. The Marina Association is indicating there could be as much as a 50% impact on the small businesses servicing the marine sector, particularly in those family islands. So the government is now listening. So what I think is really interesting about this, if you're following the dialogue closely, you got kind of two camps. You got the very vocal cruiser camp trying to explain to everybody, why this is a big deal, and then you have the Bahamians and other folks, um, that are kind of there taking other positions, and many of these people will, post pictures or whatever and say, well, there's a ton of boats in Nassau and things like that, but it's clear that um, there has been a tangible impact on these outer islands in the Bahamas. But I think what it highlights for me is really you can't lump all these boaters into a single bucket. I mean, the boats in Nassau are probably a lot of super yachts and high-end boats and things like that you wouldn't see a lot of those in the outer islands. For me, I think the fees really seem to be structured around repeat business, such as charter fishing. Um, and maybe that's the goal of it. For just looking at the fishing fees for a second, if you're bringing a charter over from Florida for the weekend or a week, yeah, you're going to pick up a hotel room and that sort of thing. Um, the fishing license issue isn't going to be a problem, right? It's not an issue. You're not there for longer than 30 days. The fees for the fishing license are going to be bundled into your charter cost, and you're just never even going to see it, right? So it's a very different kind of beast. Um, if you're a super yacht, same thing applies, right? Or maybe you're just so wealthy you don't care about the increases, and you're going to pay whatever they ask. There are also people expressing deep concerns about the environment and the impact on the Bahamas fishery. Some people have been posting YouTube videos of folks coming over on their small fishing boats and going spear fishing and loading up, and or line fishing and filling the ice chest. And I don't know if they're exceeding catch limits. Maybe they are. But again, this is one segment of the boating community, right? Um, what is the problem you're trying to solve? So all that may be true, but I would argue that the long-term live aboard cruiser does not fit into these type of categories. For fishing, a cruiser is mostly a sustenance fisherman, and you're not pulling in big loads. Last year, for example, in the Abacos, I don't think I caught a fish on rod and reel. I speared one lobster and gathered somewhere around at 9-10 conch in a 4 month period. So obviously there are fishermen that are far better than I am on these liveaboard boats. But my point is you know there's a big difference between what we did over 4 months versus what a group coming over from Florida might do in a weekend, right? That's there focused exclusively on fishing. Um, Another thing that supporters of the fees are saying is that cruisers don't spend any money. So they'll say, yeah, they're here for 6 months and they brought all their provisions from Florida and they don't spend a dime in the Bahamas. Um, I don't think that's true. Maybe some do. I would say most don't. In our case, we really put a lot of money into the places we visited in the Abaco. We bought fuel. We shopped for groceries. We bought seafood from local fishermen. We had family and friends fly into Marsh Harbor to join us. Uh, we visited the national parks. We did the garden on Grand Bahama. We ate at numerous restaurants. We had drinks at numerous beachside bars. And we were happy to do it. That was the whole point of going there. It was that was the whole experience, right? You go to these places, you meet the people, you find out what the culture is all about, you find out what the cuisine is all about. You're a traveler, not a tourist. And I think there's some people who are kind of making these points against cruisers that just don't understand what the point of cruising is. I don't buy the argument that cruisers are exploitive and don't spend money. I just simply don't believe that's true. Now, it is, of course, Bahamas' sovereign right to charge whatever fees they want to charge for this stuff. On the other side, cruisers can go where they feel they're best treated. Um, if the long-term cruiser community is an integral part to the Bahamas tourism sector, which I think it is, and I would hope that it is, there's a few things that I would suggest that they focus on when they take a look at the fee program again. First, just real quick again, the fishing license. So $100 a month, renewed in person every 30 days. That is neither price competitive or convenient. Um, it's a bad approach. They should go back to bundling in the fishing with the cruising permit. They have a separate anchoring fee now. I don't know if a part of the old fees were pulled out for anchoring or fishing. I don't know how that price was determined, but you shouldn't just do all this stuff. Put it all into the cruising permit price. Figure out what that needs to be and put that into the cruising permit price. Now, for a fishing boat coming to fish exclusively for a weekend or a week, like we previously discussed, maybe there needs to be a different type of fishing license for those folks. They're clearly doing something vastly different from what cruisers are doing. Okay. So if the impact on the fishery is an issue, it's not coming from the cruiser community. I don't believe. So second, the length of stay for the cruising permit. So they used to have a short term one, which I think was maybe it was a 6 month, might have been 4 months. Um, and now they just have a 1 year. Well, none of us coming from the States or Canada, I would think, are staying for the year in the Bahamas. We're there for the season. So there should be, I would say, a 6 month permit, a seasonal permit. And then the second part of it is match the immigration to the length of the boat stay. Right now, it's always been this way, but right now, you could get, your 1 year cruising permit for the boat, and then whatever you happen to get at whatever check-in you go to, could be 90 days, could be 120 days. I think we got 122 last year. So you got to go in person again to extend your visa. Well, now they're charging $200 per person to do that. So it's just, again, you're trying to make it a real simple destination. This would be something seems to me, you could attack, right? So if you get a 6 month cruising permit, get a 6 month visa. That seems like a no-brainer to me. Reduces the burden on the cruiser, makes it very simple, right? Could all be done online. Third, I think they've inadvertently created a big problem for boats transiting to the Caribbean. So right now, if you want to come in for fuel, you want to anchor and get some rest, you need to reprovision, what have you. You have to buy the 1 year cruising permit. Seems kind of excessive. Now, the problem with the 1 year permit is you're only allowed one exit and re-entry on that 1 year permit. So if you're going south in the fall and then you're coming back to the States or Canada in the late spring, early summer, you've already used up your exit and you haven't re-entered within 30 days. So you've got to buy a second cruising permit on your trip back up. Nowhere does that make sense. So they should either take the 1 year permit and have multiple exits and reentries like they've got on their 2 year, specifically targeting this transit market, or they should have like a 30-day transit permit. It's almost unconscionable that you can't stop for fuel without getting the permit. This is just, this needs to get fixed. This is crazy, in my mind. So anyway, those are the three things: fix the fishing license, fix the length of stay, pair it with a matching immigration visa, and then fix the transit permit situation for people going south through the Bahamas. Um, like I said, the Bahamas can do anything they want to do, but so can cruisers. I've seen comments that are a little insulting, where they go, well, the guy comes down here in his $400,000 sailboat and he's complaining about a $750 fee. They can afford it, blah, blah, blah. Well, first of all, you know, you, it doesn't matter how much money you make or how much money you got in the bank to feel like somebody's trying to take advantage of you. Um, there's that psychological aspect of it. But also, a lot of long-term cruisers don't have a lot of money in the bank, right? Many of them are retired couples on fixed incomes, and 100% increase in cruising fees, it's a real impact, and it's got a real impact on the budget. And the other thing I hear people saying is, well, it costs the same or more to go to the Yucatan, so they'll come to the Bahamas. Well, okay, let's say that's true, but you've never been to the Yucatan. This is our situation, right? It's like, well, if we're going to spend $1,800 on licenses to go to the Bahamas, and we've got the time, let's take the time and spend that money and go to Yucatan because we've never been there before, right? So listen, listen, the people making the arguments online, their opinions really don't matter on either side of this. But it's just disappointing to see people who just kind of throw everybody into one bucket, like I said at the beginning, and generalize, um, and certainly aren't appreciative of the cruiser community. And especially in lieu of like cruise ships, you're going to sell an island to Disney so they can bring people there, and that's okay, and that's where you want your economic investment to come from, versus the cruiser communities that spend 5 months experiencing a part of your islands and meeting the people, and like I said, experiencing the culture and the cuisine and making lifelong friends in many cases, and really embedding and understanding what the real Bahamas are all about. You don't want those people there. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I hope the fees are fixed. I'd like to see it work for the Bahamas and the liveaboard community. The Bahamas are a very special place, and they should be a market leader, um, and destination for liveaboard cruisers. I hope they get there. Um, we'll keep our eyes on it, and it'll be interesting to see how it all turns out. So anyway, that's it. Kind of where we're at and my 3 points to be considered if anybody's listening, and hope everyone out there has a wonderful 2026. Happy New Year.